My sister said I was useless on board. She didn't whisper it. She tossed the words like a life jacket she didn't think I'd know how to fasten. Mascot, she added, brushing past me in the jetway, wings pinned sharp on her blazer, the kind of pride that clicked against tile. I rolled my shoulders, felt the bite of the harness under my jacket, the weight of the med kit on my hip like a quiet heartbeat. I swallowed the heat that rose in my throat. I trained for 18 months in rooms that smelled like plastic and panic. Today, I was just here to ferry. Or so everyone thought. We pushed back at dusk, the cabin a soft aquarium of indigo light. I moved through rows like a ghost, checking latches, hence brushing armrests, eyes counting. C-21, C drummed his heel. 14A gripped a rosary smooth with fear. 5D kept glancing at the flight attendant call button as if it were a detonator. My sister's voice came over the PA, clean, confident, musical. I felt the plane gather itself, the runway ribboning into darkness, the lift a gentle theft from gravity. At 10,000 feet, the cabin exhaled. I could breathe again, too. The first jolt was small, a shrug from the sky. A few heads lifted, then lowered. The second made the bins tremble. I felt it through the floor, a ripple in the bones of the aircraft. The captain's chime. Then the kind of silence that isn't empty but listening. I looked at my sister. She was already unbuckled, walking the aisle with that practiced half-smile. Just a bump, she murmured to a passenger, palmed a shoulder. I checked the galley latch. My knuckles were white. My phone buzzed with the crew app alert. Medical on board, possible cardiac. Row 12. I was moving before I knew I'd stood. A man's lips were the wrong color, a twilight gray, his wife patting his cheek like it was stubborn, not dying. Sir, can you hear me? 2 beats, then a void. I snapped my fingers near his ear, watched his eyes trying to find a horizon. I'm trained, I said to my sister as she reached me, the words steadier than my ribs. I've got it. The plane shivered again, a dog shaking off rain. I knelt in the narrow aisle, my knees wedged against armrests and opened the kit. The overhead light was harsh and holy. Okay, I whispered to the man, to myself, to the sky. Stay with me. The hum of the engines turned into a pulse I could feel in my hands. My sister hovered above me, frozen between duty and disbelief. I didn't look up. Training took over where thought stopped. I tilted the man's head back, 2 fingers under the jaw, and felt nothing. No air, no rise. The aisle was too narrow, but I'd practiced in worse spaces. A simulator fuselage, tight as a coffin. Help me move him, I said. My sister obeyed automatically, her authority flickering off like a light in turbulence. Passengers twisted in their seats, whispers hissing down the rows. Is he? What's happening? Oh my God! The wife was sobbing, her hands trembling on his shoulder. I blocked it out, counting aloud. 30 compressions, 2 breaths. My palms pressed rhythm into his chest. Steady, deep, the sound of soft drum against metal and sky. My breaths came sharp between numbers. I didn't realize I was crying until sweat and tears mixed and dripped down his shirt. Defibrillator, I ordered, and my sister fumbled with the bright orange case. When she handed it to me, her hands shook. I felt her watching as I cut open the man's shirt and placed the pads. The machine's voice was robotic, calm, analyzing. Do not touch the patient. We waited, the plane rocking like a cradle. Shock advised. I stepped back. Clear. The jolt made his body arch, then settle. I leaned in, fingers searching for a miracle. A faint flutter. Then a cough, wet, fragile but real. The cabin erupted in gasps and relief. The wife clasped my arm. You saved him, she whispered, disbelief in her eyes. My sister knelt beside me, tears gathering at the edges of her mascara. I didn't know you could do that. I wiped my hands on my trousers, the smell of ozone and fear clinging to my skin. You never asked, I said quietly. The man's chest rose again, shallow but alive. I adjusted the oxygen mask and called forward to the cockpit. We need to divert, I said. Now. The captain's voice came through the intercom, calm but clipped. Understood. We're turning toward Reykjavik. The plane banked, moonlight spilling across the aisle like water. I stayed crouched beside the man, my pulse syncing with his, my sister kneeling across from me. For the first time in years, she didn't look at me like a shadow. She looked at me like a teammate. We leveled into a cold, obedient arc across the North Atlantic, and the cabin settled into that stunned hush that follows a miracle. I kept 2 fingers on the man's radial pulse, counting 1 Mississippi, 2, while my other hand adjusted the oxygen flow. My sister relayed vitals to the cockpit. The captain patched us through to MedLink. A voice I couldn't see asked for numbers. Heart rate, respiration, skin tone, like coordinates on a map. I answered without looking up. The wife sat across the aisle, knuckles pale around a crumpled tissue, her gratitude hovering between us like fragile glass. I wanted to tell her I was scared too, but the fear had a job now, and it was busy making me useful. Turbulence returned, not the playful kind, but the deep, rolling sort that moves through the fuselage like a thought changing its mind. Overhead bins trembled. A clatter from the galley shivered down the aisle. I widened my stance, wrists braced, counting compressions in my head, even though his heartbeat had steadied, because cadence keeps panic at bay. We're 22 minutes out, my sister said softly, kneeling to check the man's airway. Up close, I could see a tiny freckle near her left eye I'd forgotten. You're doing great, she added, and for a second the words were a bridge back to all the years we'd let pride be a country. The captain chimed. Cabin crew, prepare for landing. You could feel the aircraft begin to descend, a controlled surrender. My sister moved to brief the first rows. I took the rear, walking passengers through the brace position, voice low and practical. It was the part of training most people treat like a joke, practicing with plastic seatbacks and nervous laughter. Up here, it felt like a prayer you fold carefully and tuck into your pocket. I buckled the wife in and guided her breathing. In for 4, hold for 2, out for 6. The man's chest rose beneath the belted blanket, small and stubborn. Engine softened, the sky pressed closer. We hit a pocket of rough air so sharp my teeth clicked. A child cried, a businessman swore, someone started to pray in Portuguese. I met my sister's eyes across the aisle. For the first time, there was no condescension in her face, only clarity. On my call, she mouthed. I nodded. The runway lights would appear like a city pulled from the ocean. For a heartbeat, the cabin was a single organism, fear, hope breath, held together by aluminum and intent. I squeezed the man's shoulder. Stay with me, I whispered. Maybe I said it to all of us. The runway rose to meet us, like a black river lit with fireflies. Brace, brace, my sister called, voice steady as a metronome, and the cabin folded into the posture we drilled until boredom. Wheels hit, 1, 2, then a long, violent shudder that ran up my spine and rattled the bins. A chorus of gasps broke, then the heavy, grateful roar of reversers. I kept my palm on the man's sternum, feeling for that stubborn beat as the aircraft bled speed and breath. When we turned off the active, the silence felt cavernous, a bell after it struck. Emergency lights painted the windows blue-red. The door cracked. Cold air rushed in with the smell of fuel and ocean. Paramedics flooded the aisle with bright bags and clean authority. I gave the report in short, clipped sentences. Timeline, compressions, 1 shock, pulse regained, sats improving on O2, while they slid their monitor into place like a new heart. The wife kissed the man's fingertips. He blinked, confused, alive. You did right, one medic murmured, taping a line. I stepped back, realizing my knees were shaking now that it was safe to tremble. My sister's hand landed light on my shoulder, then stayed. In 23F, a teenage boy began to hyperventilate, panic rippling through him now that the danger had passed. I knelt, matching his breath with mine. In for 4, hold 2, out for 6, I said, counting softly, letting him borrow my rhythm until he found his own. I handed his mother a paper bag, adjusted the flow so he wasn't chasing air. Around us, people began to talk in relieved, messy sentences, the way humans reclaim a room after fear. A little girl in 6A whispered, "Is the plane okay?" I smiled. The plane did exactly what planes do. So did you? We taxied to a remote stand, lights low, the world moving again. The medics took the stretcher, the wife mouthed thank you as if the words were breakable. The captain appeared at door 1L, eyes tired, grateful. Nice work, he said. To my sister, then to me, the equal weight of it landing somewhere deep. When the cabin was quiet, my sister and I stood in the galley, the hum of systems a soft halo. She looked at me without armor. I called you a mascot, she said, not as a confession, but as a fact she refused to keep. I was wrong. I shrugged, suddenly shy inside the space I'd wanted for so long. You were busy flying the airplane, I said. I was busy remembering why I trained. Reykjavik's night held that clean, cold brightness that makes everything feel newly invented. The passengers deplaned in small rivers of relief, and we stayed to reset the aircraft. Trash bags, fresh blankets, paperwork stacked like thin confessions. My hands shook only when they were empty. When the terminal swallowed the last apology and thank you, my sister leaned against the galley counter, the metal cool through her sleeve. We stared at each other as if meeting after a long flight, which in a way we were. Where did you learn all that? She asked, not skeptical now, just curious. Upgrades and manuals don't teach, her voice trailed off. I tapped the kit, community responder course, then advanced airway, trauma, the whole alphabet soup. Nights and weekends. I didn't tell you because you never asked. I smiled, not bitter. And because I wanted to know I'd do it even if no one saw. Operations rebooked the through passengers, the captain filed incident reports, and Medlink sent a neat email that made survival sound like a solved equation. We walked the empty aisle together, collecting lost earbuds and courage. At 12A, my sister stopped, fingers grazing the headrest. I said you were useless, she murmured. I thought you wanted my job without earning it. I swallowed. I wanted your respect without making you carry me there. She laughed, soft and tired. You didn't just earn it tonight. You spent months earning it where I couldn't see. Outside, a tug beeped, backing into place. The plane sighed as if in agreement. We train for doors we hope will never open, I said, and then one does, and that's the whole reason we're here. The medic from earlier found us in the corridor, cheeks wind-chapped, eyes kind. He's stable, she said. Told me to tell you he feels like his chest wrestled a bear. Good work. My sister squeezed my arm, an anchor disguised as gratitude. In the crew room, beneath a bulletin board of birthdays and delays, she pinned one of her spare wings beside my name on the schedule. A joke that wasn't. Just until they make you your own, she said. I shook my head. I don't need medal. I just need the work. She rolled her eyes. Let me be ceremonial for once. On the jump seat out of Iceland, dawn found us first, thin gold over snow and sea. My sister reached across the aisle and knocked her knuckles against mine, the smallest, surest salute. Next time, she said, sit on my briefings. I nodded. Next time, I said, ask me what I've been training for. The seatbelt sign chimed. We lifted together. The email came at 3:14, timestamp between time zones, were nights of seams. Subject, you saved my husband. It was from 12CS wife. She wrote about a breakfast that tasted like a second birthday, about the sound his laugh made now that it had a brand new echo. I read it twice in the dim crew room, the vending machine casting a mint green glow, and felt something click into place that no badge could fasten. My sister patted in, hair in a loose braid, coffee like jet fuel. She didn't ask what I was reading, just nudged my shoulder with hers, the quiet language we were practicing. Ops wants us on 417 to Seattle, she said. Long leg. You good? I nodded. I was more than good. I was ready in a way that didn't need an audience. Pre-flight felt like muscle memory, finally remembering why it exists. We walked the cabin together, checklist dovetailing without tripping pride. At 1L, she ran her hand along the gasket, a pilot's superstition she'd never admit. Sit in on the briefing, she offered. I did, listening as she drew, weather on the air with her finger. Jets stream like a river, sheer like teeth. When the jump seats clicked, she leaned close. You know, she said, I used to think training was a chore wheel. I smiled. Turns out it's a promise you make to strangers you haven't met yet. She looked at me the way runway lights look at fog, patient, unafraid. At FL 350, the cabin dimmed to a soft dusk, and the sky opened like a wide door. I ran a water service with the back galley FA and found out she raised bees in her off days. She found out I collected emergency procedures like postcards. At 22B, a kid asked if planes could stop in the sky. Not exactly, I said, drawing lift with a napkin. At 14A, a grandmother pressed a hard candy into my hand like a medal, the universal currency of gratitude. Midway over the Rockies, a chime. Not medical this time. Smoke detector, lav B. Adrenaline rose slick and cold, not the panic kind, the precision kind. I grabbed the extinguisher, My sister killed the power to the unit. We moved like a single instruction. Assess, crack, sweep. Steam from an overheated vape battery, not flame. Still, the drill held. We reset, logged, breathed. When the cabin settled, my sister slid into the jump seat opposite mine, the aisle between us the narrowest ocean we'd ever crossed. You changed up there, she said softly. Or maybe I just looked. I twirled the candy in my fingers, a tiny planet. I trained because I hated feeling small, I admitted. Turns out the work doesn't make you bigger. It makes the world safer at the edges, and that's enough. She nodded, a decision landing. Next month, our company's sending people to advanced response. I'm putting your name first. I laughed. I'm already on the wait list. We grinned like kids who found the same map separately. She turned toward the window, where dawn was rising in slow gold over the horizon. The light hit her face in a way that softened the usual sharpness, the commander's mask, the sister's pride, and for the first time I saw just fatigue and warmth. You know, she murmured, I used to envy how calm you always seemed down there. I thought it was laziness. I laughed quietly. It was fear, I said. I just learned how to keep it useful. She nodded, and for a while we sat in the hush between engine hum and sunrise, both of us carried by the same air we finally trusted. When we landed, the passengers applauded, that spontaneous, clumsy gratitude people give to the sky for letting them go. My sister glanced at me, and without words, we shared the smallest smile. It wasn't triumph, it was recognition. I followed her out of the cockpit, the runway bright beneath our feet, the wind cold enough to sting but clean enough to start over. The world felt wide again, and this time I belonged in it. At customs, the crowd split into ribbons of exhaustion and hurry. We walked side by side, badges clipped, steps unconsciously in sync. For years, silence had been the only language between us. All duty, no dialogue, but now even our quiet felt different, full instead of empty. She bumped my shoulder lightly as we passed the security gate. Coffee before the next leg? It was the kind of invitation that used to sound routine. Now it felt like rebuilding a bridge, one cup at a time. I nodded. Only if you let me pay. She grinned. You've already paid enough. At the cafe, the noise of arriving crews wrapped around us, laughter, checklists, gossip in 5 accents. My sister sipped her espresso, then said, almost to herself, You know what I realize up there? We don't train for the emergencies. We train for the seconds before them, so we can choose not to panic. I let that settle between us, the truth simple and clean. Guess that's what family is too, I said. Training for the seconds before the world falls apart. She looked at me and smiled, the kind that says finally. Later, walking toward the terminal glass, I watched another jet lift into the clouds, the silver body catching light like a promise. Somewhere in that roar was the sound of every lesson I'd learned. Patience, readiness, the courage to stay. My sister caught me looking and said, You thinking about the sky again? I shook my head. No, I'm thinking about what it takes to come back down. She laughed, and in that laugh, I heard everything we hadn't said for years, apology, pride, and the kind of love that doesn't need rescue anymore.